Hello, everyone. I welcome you all to the session on SQL today, right? So, this is where we are going to learn how do we code using SQL, right? Maybe let's just wait for a minute or two to see if others have also joined in. I hope my screen is visible and my voice is loud and clear to everyone. Do let me know in the comment for uh, anything. Just give me a confirmation if my voice is audible well and my screen is also available for you guys. All right. So before we get started, I'll just quickly give introduction about myself. So I am Praveen Kumar Punia, and I have a total of 5 years of experience now in data science. I currently work at Mastercard as a senior analytics consultant. Prior to this, I worked at New Sigma for 3 years as a data scientist. Right, and I have been into training and teaching, mentoring students, working professionals to get into data science, right? And in that series of chains, I'll be introducing you guys to SQL today, and we will see practically how we can, write SQL queries, fetch some data points from the database, and how do we manipulate database basically. So, with that, I think we can get started. Right. So SQL stands for Standard Query Language, right? So it's basically a query language which we use to manipulate the database, right? So what is database? First thing, database is nothing but collection of tables, right? So let's say we all have gone to college, right? So in a college, there could be a table or which contains information about, let's say, CS department. Now this table might have information about the student employee ID, right? How many students are studying in this department? You know, it could be like their gender, their city, their subjects, right? So this could be some four columns, and there could be some random values like student ID one, gender is like M, city is like, let's say, Delhi, and subject is like, say, network and computing. So this could be one table. There could be another table which could be like for the IT department, and so on and so forth. Now when we combine all of these tables and store them in one place, right, that is what we refer to as database. So database is nothing but collection of tables. So SQL is used to query this database. When we say query, it means basically fetch some rows, fetch basically data points from the database, right? It can fetch up the data points, it can add up the data points, it can delete the data points, it can update data points. So these are some of the usual operations we do using SQL on the database, right? Now a good question here could be that we are already on Excel platform right now, correct? And Excel already helps us with the in a spreadsheet format we can store the data, right? So we have already created a table over here. Let's say I just create this table here. Now this looks like a table. We have got these columns. Let's say I'll highlight them in bold. Now this is also holding data, so why do we even need to go to the database? This could be a question, right? Now if you try to go to the last cell in the Excel, this is basically 10 lakhs 48,000. So basically this piece of Excel can only store data points 10 lakh 48,000 in one sheet, right? So that is the limitation of Excel as a tool. And if at all we would want to store more data points, where do we head to? We will have to go to the database, right? So some examples could be SQL Server database, it could be MongoDB and others as well, right? So we will be storing our data, basically our tables over there. And whenever we would want to perform some analysis, let's say we would want to understand out of all the students that are present in the CS department, which student has got the highest marks. So we will have to write some code that will basically fetch the information from this database, and that is where we use SQL. That is one task, fetch up data points from the database. Other examples could be, every now and then we will have more students coming into the into the college, right, into the CS department. So we would want to add some rows, right, add information about the students. So that is where we manipulate the database and we add the rows. Now with every passing year there would be some sort of students who be passing over, right? So we would also have to remove their records at times, and there could be other scenarios where we would want to remove the records. So that is where we delete some records. And every now and then, right, we might have to update some records. Let's say students are changing their subjects, let's say students are changing their cities, right? So we will also have to update the already entered data. Now in the today's session we will practically see how we can write SQL queries and implement this must to do tasks using SQL. So for that, I will suggest everyone to please open up their laptops and get started with this online platform where we can run our SQL queries. I am dropping that in the chat. And if you just click on this link, it will lead you to this page, right? Over here, this is basically an online platform where we can write SQL queries. We can create tables, we can query them. Basically we can practice SQL online. We do not have to install any software for this, all online, right? So let's leverage this platform for today's hands-on exercise. And for the time, right, don't worry about what the table is, how are we creating the table, right? Just assume that you already have a code. I'll be giving that to you in the chat. You already have this piece of code, right? If you just select this entire piece of code like this and go to the platform, you just have to paste it over here like this. Right now this, all of this comes in a line, single line. Maybe we can try to indent this to understand better. All that you have to do is, first of all, click on the link shared in the chat, get to this platform. Now copy paste the code that I have shared in the chat, right? Paste it over here and maybe try to indent this better for your understanding. Right, just give me a sec. Right, now what we have to do is we have to select the entire piece of code that we have just entered. We have selected the piece of code and we will go to the run button. Once we run it, okay, it says incomplete input. Yeah, over here it was incomplete. I have made that change. Now let's try to run this. Just a sec. It has already created this table employee. We need to drop that. See, if you see, we have already created a table employee over here, and we are now again trying to create the table employee. So that will not get created unless we remove that table. So we have deleted that table now. And now if we try to run this piece of code, it will create the table. Run it. The table has been created. Now what this table is, let's see again. So this is a table about, the table name is employee and it has information about the employee. So it has information like employee ID, employee name, its department ID, the salary that they are earning, their manager ID and their age, right? These are the columns we have got. So if I just try to take this in a Excel itself, the information that we have just entered is EID for employee ID, then employee name, then department ID, the salary, manager ID, and age. And age. So, what is the first record looking like? The first record is of the employee whose employee ID is 1, his name is Ankit, department ID is 100, salary is 10,000, manager ID is 4, age is 39. Okay, we have entered multiple rows like this. Okay, don't worry much about what the code is. We will be explaining, we'll be understanding about how to create table, how to insert rows into this. The prima facie understanding should be about the table right now. Okay, so we will park this for towards the end of the session, right? So we have created the table. Now if you would want to see what are the rows, what are the columns inside this table, right? And if you want to fetch relevant information from this table, we will have to write code using SQL, right? And when we do that, you will understand, writing SQL is something like the way we speak in English. The way we speak in English is exactly the way we are going to code in SQL. Let's see that. So let's say the problem statement or the task for us is to get all data points inside the table. Let's say that is the requirement. So basically we need to select all the rows, all the columns from the table, right? So for that, let's see how we code in SQL, right? So we start off with the statement select. What select will do is it will select the columns from the table. So right now you see that we need all the data points, means what, all the columns, all the rows. So we will do select star. Star means it will take all the columns from the table. Okay, so we are doing select star. Now from which table, we have to give the table name as well. So the table name is employee, correct? Now this is the piece of code select. Now what it is selecting, star. Star means all the columns from the table. Okay, so select star from table. Now if we just run this piece of code, I have selected the code, I go to run. Okay, we have the output below. What do we see? We see a table. It has got information like employee ID, employee name, department ID, salary, manager ID, and employee age. And we can see the information as well, right? So employee ID 1 is Ankit, his department ID is 100, salary is 10,000, manager ID is 4, and age is 39. I'll just pause here for a minute to see if you guys have any questions. And maybe you can also put in the chat if you have any questions, and all of your questions other than the current topic will be addressed at the end of the session. And if you have any immediate questions, do let me know. All right, I don't see anything in the chat, so let's move ahead with this. So the first task is done. Generally we would want to see all the data present inside the table. So we have seen that. Now let's say the requirement is we only want to see the employee ID from the table, all the rows of employee ID column. So in that case, what we will do? We will only select the particular column. So we only want to see one column. So I am just giving that one column in the select statement. So select the column name from the table name, correct? And if I just run this, what you will see? Just one column and entire rows. So all the employees, there were a total of 7 employees starting with employee ID 1 to 7. So we can see all the rows, right? Now let's say the requirement is along with the employee ID also shows the employee name. So we can just give a comma and specify the another column name, which will be employee name, right? Again, select the entire piece of code, run it. Now what do you see? Two columns, employee ID and employee name, and we have got all the employees covered here, starting with employee ID 1 Ankit to employee ID 7 Sanjay. Correct? Similarly, you must have understood, right? If at all the relevant columns that we want to see in the output, same set of columns need to be passed in the select statement. So isn't it the way we speak in English? Let's say I ask a question here, get employee ID and employee name from the table. Now let's say this is the problem statement, or let's say the problem statement is print employee ID and employee name from the table. So what do? We only select those two columns from the table, right? Similarly, we can give you know again comma and select more relevant columns. Let's say we want to also see their salary. So just select the salary column also, press and run, and we would see their salaries also. So in this way, we are selecting the columns, right? And it will take all the rows of those columns basically. There were only 7 rows we entered in the table, and we are able to see all 7 of those rows. If you try to scroll down, you will see that. Right. Now, problem statement could change that they might only want to see employee ID, employee name of those employees who, let's say, have salary greater than 10,000. Let's say get employee ID and employee name from the table whose salary is greater than 10,000. Now, if I ask you to manually verify which are those employees whose salary is more than 10,000, so it's definitely not Ankit because his salary is exactly 10,000. Mohit is the one, his salary is 15,000. Similarly, Vikas is also not there, Rohit is also not there. Mudit qualifies, his salary is 10,000. Again, Agam is also having salary more than 10,000. So if you see the condition that we are passing, that salary should be greater than 10,000, basically only 4 employees satisfy the condition, and that is the reason why we will only want to see the data for 4 employees, which are Mohit, then Mudit, Agam, and Mohit. Only this set of employees. So we should be able to limit the number of rows. Now, when I told about select, right, it was only selecting the columns. Now we would want to select those employees who have salary greater than 10,000. So basically we are limiting the rows. Basically we are filtering the rows. So how do we do that in SQL? We do that using the where clause, right? We can pass the condition using the where clause. So what is the condition? Condition is that salary is greater than 10,000. So how do we write it mathematically? Say salary should be greater than 10,000, like this. Correct? So what are we exactly doing? We are selecting those employees, their employee ID, their employee name, their salary from the table employee, right? Where salary is greater than 10,000. So basically we are selecting only those rows which have salary greater than 10,000. Now if I run this piece of code and we look at the output, you see there are only 3 employees, Mohit, Mudit, Agam, and each of them have got salary greater than 10,000, isn't it? So if at all you would want to filter the rows based on a condition, you will have to use the where clause, right? Similarly, if at all, let's say we want to see those employees data which have salary less than 10,000, so we can give a less than mark, right? Just select the entire piece of code that we want to run, go and click on the run button. What do we see? Rohit and Sanjay, each of them having salary less than 10,000. Now, a question could be asked here. You know, get the employee ID, employee name, from the table whose salary is greater than 10,000 and their age is also above 20, and let's say age is above 20. So basically we have got two conditions to satisfy over here. And if I again try to show you guys the data that we have, so what I will do, select star from the employee table. Star will select all the columns, right? So we are basically selecting all the columns from the employee table. Observe carefully, we have not entered any where clause. If you don't enter any where clause, that means you are selecting all the rows, correct? So it will select all the rows of all the columns because star is present over here. Now if I again run this, now try to verify which are those employees having salary greater than 10,000 and also their age is 20. We see that roughly all the employees are having age greater than 20 except Agam, Sanjay and Rohit. And out of these three employees, only Agam has salary greater than 12,000, right? So let me just run the code for this condition. Let's say we also try to output age also. So what is the column name for age? It is employee age, right? Now, what is the condition here, guys? The condition is that we should have salary greater than 10,000 and employee age should also be more than 20. So basically we have another condition here, right? So this another condition also will go in the where clause only, right? Where clause will have all those conditions which you are using to filter the rows, correct? So what is the condition like? Employee age should be greater than 20, correct? So we are selecting four columns. We should see these four columns in the output: the employee ID, the employee name, their salary, their age. From which table? From the employee table. And we are only selecting those rows which satisfy the condition that salary is also greater than 10,000 and age is also greater than 20. So when I run this now, you can manually verify that both Mohit and Mudit satisfy our condition. Their salary is greater than 15,000, I mean 10,000, right? And their age is also more than 20. And all the other employees, we have basically missed down to the 5 other employees, right? They were not satisfying our condition, both the conditions that we have, on salary column and the age column as well. So we are not outputting them, correct? So similarly, you can pass on more conditions as well. Let's say you want to pass a condition that their department ID should be, let's say 100. The department ID should be equal to 100, right? Though you can just select this particular column in the select statement as well. Why are we adding these columns in the select statement? It is not required, guys. Okay, you could have only entered just one column also, like the employee ID. It's fine, you can enter just one column also. But why are we exactly entering the other columns? Because we can manually verify also whether the row that we are outputting is satisfying the conditions or not. Okay, and for that let us run this piece of code. What do we see? There is only one employee, Mohit, who is satisfying our conditions. Salary is also more than 10,000, age is also more than 20, and department ID is also 100, right? So this is the kind of requirements we have generally in the industry. Fetch relevant information. Now that you have fetched relevant information, you could answer to the business that there is only one employee, Mohit, who is following this condition, correct? And let's say the output that we get is, let's say, hundreds of rows satisfying this condition. So now they can use this hundreds of uh, employees for their own use case. They could be interested to maybe reward them, or maybe assign them new work, or maybe talk to them about a different opportunity or something. So that's about it. The applications could be numerous, right? I'll just take a 1 minute pause here to see if you guys have any questions. Feel free to put them in the chat as well. I'm having a look at the chat window very intermittently and happy to answer any questions that you have. Feel free to let me know your thoughts on this, guys. Right now, what I will do is I will, remove these other conditions because these other conditions were basically limiting our rows. Right now, I just only put one condition that the salary should be more than 10,000. And if I just run the piece of code, you'll see that you get three employees in the output, and all of them are satisfying our condition that salary is more than 10,000. Now it could be very well a case that you would only want to see the data for those employees whose first name is starting with the letter, let's say, M. So which are those employees? Those are Mohit and Mudit, right? So how do we put this condition that employee name should start with the letter M? So for that we will make use of the wildcard. And even before we go there, let's discuss a very important topic. So if you see in this table that we have got in the output, there is only one column which has categorical values. Only employee name is the one which has text or words, and basically it is a categorical column. So how do we put a condition on categorical column? Is it like employee name is equal to, let's say, Mudit? If you try to run this piece of code, you will get into errors. It says that Mudit is no such column. Basically, all the categorical variables, right? We will put their values in single quotes or double quotes. Okay, like this. I will put single quotes and then I will put Mudit. Okay, and now if I run the piece of code, you see in the output there is only one employee which is satisfying our condition that their salary is also more than 10,000 and their name is also Mudit, right? Now, coming back to the original question, we were supposed to output those employees whose name is starting with the letter M, correct? So, for that, we will make use of the wildcard. So, what is wildcard is this percentage sign. Okay, what this percentage sign means is if I just write capital M first and then percentage, it means that the name needs to starts with M, and after M it could be any letter. Okay, and if I run the piece of code, you'll see that, okay, my bad. Right, so one more thing, guys, you should always try to put your categorical variables with the word like. Okay, is equal to also works, but this platform is not supporting it currently. Okay, but the best practice is always to use like. Equal will also work, but like is more efficient, more optimized. Okay, so you should put like. Now what I said, if you put M and then this percentage sign, it means that the name, the letter, the name needs to starts with capital M, and after capital M it could be anything. This percentage sign denotes that anything, any letter can be coming after this. Okay, so after M it could be anything, right? So if I just run the piece of code, what do you see in the output? There are only two employees which are coming up in the output, and both of the employees have the starting letter in their name as capital M, right? And that is what the problem is was, get those employees which have name starting with the letter M, and also their salary should be greater than 10,000. So you can verify that salary is greater than 10,000, right? Now, what if I reverse this percentage and I put capital M at the end? Then it means that any letter can be preceding this capital M. Okay, the column employee name should end with capital M. Okay, the last letter should be capital M. And do you think there is any employee like that? I don't think so. Okay, there is one employee which is Agam, right? So there is one employee which is having salary more than 10,000 also, and they have the ending letter as M also. Now there could very well be a situation where you would want to see whether they contain letter A in their name or not. So in that case, you can put percentage sign just before A and just after A as well. This means, inside the word employee name, right, inside this column employee name, if at all there are any names which at least have A. Okay, it could be at the start, it could be in the between, it could be in the end as well. Now, if I run the piece of code, what do you see? There is again only one employee which is satisfying the condition. That salary is also more than 10,000. Name also contains the letter A. Now, what if I remove this condition salary? On the salary column, if I remove the condition, then our code will only fetch those employees which have name, which have letter A present in their name. Okay, there is no more any condition on salary. So I think this should fetch more rows now. Yes, if you see, it has fetched us more rows now. It has fetched us a total of 4 rows. Ankit is there, Vikas is there, Agam is there, and Sanjay. All of them have a common similarity. At least A is present in their names, right? So this is by far, if I quickly try to take a recap of what all we have covered in the session till now, how do we select, you know, the columns of interest? We will put those columns in the just after the select statement. So select statement will select those particular columns. Now where does it need to select it from? It need to select it from the table. So we need to give the from state clause, specify the table name, and let's say we want to see only certain employees which satisfy a condition, or let's say we want to select only certain rows which are satisfying a condition. So we will pass those conditions using the where clause. Okay, so in the where clause we will pass the condition. I'll just take a 1 minute pause here, and maybe you guys can take it as an opportunity to try and implement this code in your system. I have already shared the codes in the chat to create the table. Once the table is created, you can go about writing your queries in this. I'll also drop in some of the queries in the chat so that you can try to execute this. Let me just change the condition, and let me just put one condition that salary is greater than 10,000. So we are seeing the data of those employees who have salary greater than 10,000 in the data, and for those respective employees we are looking at their employee ID, employee name, salary, age, and department ID. Okay, so I will run this code again now, and we see this. Now it could be a demand or a request that sort this data as well. So what do we do to sort this? Maybe let's, what we can also try to do is just take this piece of information in Excel and try to understand how exactly we do this in Excel. Okay, so that way I think our understanding will be even more robust. So if we discuss how do we do these things in Excel, let's say the data is a little different. What do we do to filter the, let's say we would want to filter those employees which have subjects AI. Okay, let me just put in some more information. So what do we do to filter the rows which are satisfying a condition? We go to the insert statement, we create this pivot table. No, not pivot table, my bad. We can go to the data tab, insert a filter, right? We can insert the filter through here. Now, once the filter is up, what is the condition? Subject should be AI. So click on the subjects column and only select the AI, right? And we will see only these two rows. So this filtering that we have done, this is happening with the help of the where clause, right? This where clause that salary should be greater than 10,000. Similarly, if at all we would want to sort this data, what do we do? Again, we go to the sort option over here, right? We can select the column. Let's say we would want to sort basis the ID. Okay, how do we want to sort it? Smallest to largest. Currently it is smallest to largest. Let's say we would want to switch it. We'll switch largest to smallest. Click on OK. It has been sorted. Now how do we do that using SQL? So we make use of the order by clause. Right now, if you see, these employees, they are arranged on in an employee ID column, smallest to largest. Let's say you would want to sort them basis their age. Okay, you would want to sort them basis their age. So what you can do, just write the statement order by. Order by basically sorts it. On which column do we want to sort it based on? We want to sort it based on the employee age column. So employee age over here. Now, how do we want to sort it? If you don't specify any ascending descending manner, it will by default sort it from ascending to descending. So if you just select the code, run it, what do you see in the output? The order has now changed. If you observe the column employee age, first 14 is coming, then 48, then 55, right? So data points have been sorted now. Earlier, Agam was coming towards the last. Now it is coming top because he is having the smallest age, isn't it? Then Mohit with age 48, then Mudit with age 55. So basically, for sorting, we can make use of the order by clause. Now let's say you would want to sort them descending to ascending. So you can just specify the DESC keyword, right? After the column, you would want to sort the employee age column from descending to ascending. So just put DESC, select the piece of code, run it. What do we see? Rows have now been sorted from descending to ascending manner, right? First of all, 55 age is coming, then 48, and then 14, right? Now, you might also be wanting to, sort. Let's say you would want to sort on salary column, not the employee age column. Let's say you would want to sort on salary column from descending to ascending. Okay, so you are just basically change the column name in the order by clause. Okay, now it should sort. This is the salary column descending to ascending. Now if you see the output, it has now sorted the rows. First 15,000 coming, then 12,000, then again 12,000. Now second and third row both have the same salary, you know. So how do we sort them? Why, it could be a question, why is Mudit coming first, then why is Agam coming first, second? What is the reason? So this is how the data is actually present in the database. Okay, Mudit was coming first and then Agam. Now let's say you would want to change it, you would want to sort basis two columns. Okay, in the Excel you could also put in conditions, right? You could sort on more than one column as well. Let's say you are sorting first on ID, then you could add one more level. You could also sort basis the gender column, right? It would do that. Same thing here also we can do. We can sort on multiple columns as well. How? We will again have to give comma over here. Then what is the next column we would want to sort on? Let's say we have already sorted on salary. Now let's maybe sort them basis the employee name. So you can just simply put employee name over here. And if you don't specify ascending to descending or descending to ascending, by default it will do ascending to descending by default. Now, how are the text columns sorted? They are not numbers, so we don't have smallest to largest or largest to smallest, right? So they are sorted in the manner they come in the dictionary. So letter A comes first and Z comes the last. Okay, so if we sort this, A will come up first, right? So if I just select the piece of code, run it, what do you see? It is sorting the on the basis of the salary column first. Okay, that is why 15,000 is coming on the top, then 12,000 and then 12,000 again. So these two have a match. So for that we have already given that if they have a match on salary, sort them on the employee name. And we are not specifying ascending to descending over here or descending to ascending. So by default, it is doing ascending to descending. And that is why Agam is coming first, because then Mudit, because it is coming first in the dictionary, right? Now let's say you specify descending to ascending. Then ideally in that case, Mudit should come on top of Agam. Let us see if that happens. You see, that has happened clearly over here, isn't it? I'll just take a 1 minute pause to see if you guys have any questions, any thoughts. Happy to answer that. I hope everyone is able to also run the piece of code in the chat section. I'm sharing the chat. I'm sharing the codes. Feel free to copy paste the codes, run it, verify the output yourself. You'll understand better. What the code is exactly trying to do. All right, I don't see anything in the chat, so maybe let's move ahead with the topics. The next topic is about how do we group the rows. If you take reference of this table, let's say you would want to see how many students are present in female gender and how many are present in male gender, or let's say you would want to see how many students are present in Delhi and Mumbai correspondingly. What do we do in Excel? We can just insert a pivot chart, pivot table, right? So I'm doing that over here, and let's say you would select city in the rows and count of ID in the values. So right now it has taken some. Let me change that to count. So what do we see? In total, there are three employees in students in Delhi and one student in Mumbai. And that's also something that we can verify manually, right? Three students are belonging to Delhi. Now this was pretty easy, right? Let's say you have thousands and thousands of rows. Okay. In that situation, either you can apply pivot table and work that out in Excel, or in the SQL also you can achieve that with the help of group by statement. So group by statement will basically group similar rows. Okay, like these rows will are similar, Delhi and these two as well, right? So it will basically group these rows and do aggregations like minimum, maximum, average, count, etc. Right? So let's say over here also we would want to group the rows basis the department ID. Okay, what I will do is I will just remove some of these statements to better explain this. Now let's say I am just selecting these four columns: ID, name, salary, employee age, department ID from the table employee. So basically all the rows we have selected and specific columns. Now let's say we want to understand how many employees are belonging to department ID 100, how many are belonging to department ID 200. Okay, there are only two department IDs. So how do we do that? Okay, for that we have to first of all understand what do we need in the output. In the output would look something like this only. There will be one column which will have department ID, and another column will have count of employee IDs, right? Basically count of employee ID that is belonging to each of the department. Correct? That is the problem statement. Let me also write it over here. Get count of employees in each department. Right? Get the count of employees in each department. The output should look something like this only. So how many employees are there in department ID 100? Let's say 5. How many are in 200? I'm just entering raw data over here. So why are we trying to understand the output? Because if you only can visualize the output, only then you can code in, you can code better in SQL. Okay, so basically we need two columns in the output, so we will only have to give two columns in the select statement also. And what are those two columns? One is department ID, the other column is count of employee ID. Do we have any column which is giving you the count of employee ID? Look at the data over here. Is there any column which gives you the count of employee ID? No, right? You will have to do some aggregation to get that, and that aggregation will be your count operation. Count will do the counting of employee IDs. Now we are counting the employee ID, so put that in the parenthesis and count of employee ID. So we have basically selected the two columns, and these two columns should come up in the output now like this. Okay. Now where are we selecting this from? We are selecting this from the employee table. And how are we getting this? By grouping on the department ID column. Basically, there were 7 rows earlier, right? If you look at the code, let me just rerun the code once again. Select star from the employee table. There were a total of 7 rows, isn't it? Now, the output that we want is we would want to group basis the department column. So we need to specify the department column in the group by statement. Okay. Now once I run this, it should give me number of employees for each department. Correct. So that is why we have used department ID column in the group statement, because it is grouping similar rows. So there were total of 4 rows in the data which were having department ID 100, and 3 rows which were having department ID 200. You can manually verify that in the data as well. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 employees having department ID 400, and then 3 employees having department ID 200. So other than count, you could have also done, the statement could be, get the sum of employees, get the sum of salaries in each department. So in that case, we'll have to use sum, and then we would have to do this sum of salary, right? Again, we are grouping by the department ID column only, so that we get for each department what is the sum of salary. We have just changed the aggregation. We have changed the aggregation to sum, and we are doing the aggregation on this salary column. So only that has changed right now. But you might be thinking, this column is not looking good. Sum of salary is not looking fine. Maybe let's change it. So you can change the name of the column as well. You can specify how the column name should see look in the output. How do we do that? Using an alias as, right? You can rename or basically specify what column should name should come up in the output. Let's say you would want to see as sum of salary, like this. Now the column name would become sum underscore salary. Let's see. Correct. Now we don't give spaces between the column name words. Okay, we never ever do that. So that's why I put underscore. Now another question here, that is it like we can only group on just one column like city? Can we not group on subject also? We can write in Excel also, we can do that. So what do? We again take subjects into the rows, right? And we can just specify the condition. All right. So basically we can also specify that for each possible combination of, let's say in our data we have department ID and we also have got, mm, let's say you would want to group on two columns. Okay, you would want to group on department ID also and you would want to group on manager ID also. So you can do that. Okay, just that you will have to visualize first of all what output do you want to see. You would want to see count, or let's say you would want to see sum of salaries basis department ID and manager ID, correct? So first of all, let's visualize how would it look like. So there are, there could be more than one manager belonging to 100 ID. It could be like, manager ID 4, their salary could be like, let's say 15,000. Okay. Now again, department ID 100, there could be different manager 3. Salary and for people working under them could be like, let's say 20,000. So this is how first of all you should have an understanding, what we are trying to achieve. Now, once we have that understanding, how many columns are there in the output? There are a total of 3 columns, right? So those 3 columns should also come up in the select statement, isn't it? So let's try to put them. If I put department ID also, manager ID also, now third column is basically our sum of salary, right? We have put those 3 columns in the select statement, so that will definitely come up in the output now. Okay. Now we are giving from the employee table, and what are the columns we are grouping upon? We are grouping upon basis the department and the manager ID, right? So we will put them in the group by clause, right? That also group basis the manager ID, and we have already specified that we would want to see the sum of the salary, right? So that's what we have already specified here. Now if I run this piece of code, let's see the output. So if you see, there are 3 unique managers in department ID 100, 2 unique managers in department ID 200, 2 or what, 3, no, 2 only, and we have got the sum of salaries as well. We could have also got the count of employee ID belonging to each possible combination. So I will just do that. I can just name the column as count of EID, run it, and what do we see? So we see that manager ID 2 has got one employee working for them, but in department ID 100. And that same manager ID, so the same manager in the department ID 200 has got two employees working under them. So this is the kind of information you can try to draw by coding in SQL, right? So I'll again put this in the chat. You guys feel free to implement this at your end. And I think we have tried to cover a lot of topics today in the session. So I'll just now I'm open to any questions if you guys have. So yep, you can let me know. I'm open to questions now. I hope the session was very helpful to every one of you. We did make a lot of progress today, right? We understood how we can select relative or selective columns, making use of the select clause. Then we understood the use of the from clause. This is basically the clause which satisfy which basically tells us which table we are referring to. Then where clause is used to filter the relevant rows. It can after this where clause we can specify the conditions on the columns, and that's how we can filter the relevant rows. After that we also covered the order by clause. So we understood that we can sort the rows ascending to descending or descending to ascending using the order by clause. Post that we understood that using the group by clause we can basically group similar rows and do the aggregation on top of them. Aggregation could be like some min, max, average, etc. I hope this was well understood and open to questions if you guys have any. All right, I don't see any question in the chat, so maybe we can wrap up the session here for today. And I hope to see you guys soon. Thanks all for joining in.